just going to talk about what we're going to be doing today. Welcome. Thank you for joining us at the Global Photographies Network again. I'm Sarah Pickering. I'm artist and lecturer at the Slade School of Fine Art in University College London, co-founder of the Global Photographies Network, along with Duncan Waldridge, who's artist, curator, writer and course director of the MA in Fine Art Photography in Camberwell College of the Arts, University of the Arts, London. And in June 2020, Duncan and I started thinking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our students' learning and the parallel issues we were concerned about in developing a more global discussion around contemporary photography, photographic ideas, values, histories, and education. Too often, the global discussion around contemporary photography builds on a model of Western discourse around photography, with works from underrepresented photography cultures given exposure only to the degree that they conform to it. So we reached out to our colleagues in the UK at Falmouth University, University of Westminster, Leeds Arts University, who along with us have all worked with international partners through their roles in universities and also as practitioners. And now our network has expanded to include universities and arts organisations in many countries, including the Michaelis School of Art, University of Cape Town, South Africa, Gothenburg University, HDK Valand in Sweden, the Universidad de Palermo in Argentina, and organisations in Mexico, Taiwan, and Indonesia. Our audience today covers several continents. And our ambition as the Global Photographies Network expands is for a horizontal model of collaboration and a space where artists, photographers, writers, and curators can be given a large platform to present their work, and where discussion and dialogue can be shared. And that's already happening via publication projects and seminar groups and reading groups that we've got set up with our partners. So a few things about the webinar. There's a Q&A box at the bottom. Please enter your questions at any point into the Q&A box, and we'll select questions that can be answered in the approximately 15 minutes of quick Q&A time at the end of the talk. The talk may well be nearer an hour because we've got 3 people talking today, which is fantastic. And I'm going to introduce Alejandra Niedermaier, who's a photographer, teacher and researcher based in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And she's leading our talk today and devised it and invited our guests as well. And she's going to introduce them in turn. She's holder of a master's degree in combined artistic languages. Alejandra has written 2 books about the first female photographers in Latin America from a historical approach. One was published in Argentina in 2008 and the other in France in 2016. And a new version will appear in Argentina during 2022, and we hope that will be more broadly circulated. So with one foot in history and another in the multiple present, and in order to glimpse the becoming, her writings explore the visual language from different aspects, from aesthetics, gender, Latin America, and didactics. She teaches at the National University of Art and at the Universidad de Palermo, both from Argentina. She's going to be in conversation today and host presentations by Sarah Pabst and Lilia Pereira, and she'll be introducing them today. So I'm going to hand over to Alejandra. I'm really excited about the talk today, and thank you, Ale.
Thank you, Sarah. We are very glad to have you all here. Today we will speak shortly about female photographic narrative in Latin America. Since the beginning of photography, women have deployed production actions that became true visual archives of resistance by allowing emancipated subjectivities. Visual studies in a feminist key are a powerful tool of analysis to find the conditions of visibility, representation, and self-representation, and to reveal the multiple intertwining between the private and the public, between the inner and the outer. Women have been symbolically associated with nature, while men have been identified with culture. The strong bond that was established between photography and women emphasizes the association with cultural construction. Post-colonial, postmodernism, feminism, and queer theory thoughts brought a sort of revolution in the field of representation. Therefore, it is absolutely pertinent, the famous phrase, "the personal is political," popularized by Carol Hanisch in 1969, since there is no experience that is not subject to rules, obstacles, and forces that are of the order of the public. About that, Hannah Arendt considered that active life as a political and sensitive experience demands visibility. Gender, in its socio-cultural construction, is a semiotic apparatus, a system of representation that carries and at the same time assigns meaning to individuals in society. In turn, the image as a sign facilitates the system of representation because the semantic contents that are displayed maintain a direct relationship with the way of seeing and feeling the world. The different aesthetic productions make up a universe that works on the real and the imaginary through the symbolic. They contribute to the construction of an open space in permanent dispute. This political revolution in the field of representation gave rise to contemporary art. We can establish a relationship between experience and visual storytelling. What is called experience is of a heuristic order and is recorded at the body. A meaning is attributed to this experience. Its sense is shared, transmitted, and communicated. Regarding the visual transmission of the experience, Walter Benjamin has pointed out that only through visual language if it is possible to perceive the optical unconscious. We can add as well that a complex affective process is involved in visual perception. All this makes up the poetic gesture. The imprint of the producer is imbued in the image thanks to the technological mediation of the camera. Under these considerations, contemporary enunciations arise in which it can be noticed, among other aspects, that these are generations of visual producers who deliberately reflect on the experience of being a woman. After affect and being affected is what waves their visual practices and is the core of the construction of a shared history, of the development of the drama of seeing through the camera. Thus, these visual gestures maintain a close relationship between body and photography and are endowed with a deep symbolic character, always crossed by cultural, economic, political, and sexual aspects. The body, as a significant matter of female identity, condenses gestures and expressions that account different kinds of tensions. It becomes a territory of the self that drives a possibility of discourse and therefore houses the different senses of the image. Now I will show you a few photographs from different kinds of female photographers. From the Colombian artist Erika Dites, we can see her project Sudarios, Shrouds, where she addresses the armed conflict in Antioquia through black and white photographs of women portraying them as their narrative at the same moment as they narrate the dramatic experiences of the murder of their loved ones, which mostly they must been witnessed. She prints the portraits on a translucent cloth and hangs them at churches or similar religious houses. The Argentine photographer Viviana De Vicky uses old photographs to connect her work with memory and also with a certainty of the long road that a female figure has traveled. The embroidery, which with its metalinguistic and poetic functions, dialectizes the way of seeing the body. It veils and reveals at the same time. Another Argentine artist, Maria Laura Domínguez, in her project Performative Devices, performs a process of deconstruction of the body using pre-cinematographic artifacts. Her devices show through light the corporality. Through light, they shape the matter. The images of Lucia von Sprecher also deploy the performative. In these photos, the body is understood as the place of experience, desire, reflection, resistance, and social changes. In Guerreras, Warriors, History of Resilience, Eleonora Gioldi shows since 2011, through portraits and testimonies, different issues related to violence, especially patriarchal violence, in Mexico, USA, and Argentina. We can also see that she handwrites with the story of each portrait. She makes handwrite over the picture. On the worldwide problem of femicides and human trafficking, we can mention, among others, the photographers Mayra Martel from Mexico, and Cecilia Anton from Argentina. From these photos, it can be inferred that the image has the possibility of bringing together in a lighting the symptom, the critical point of a situation. It serves as a sparkle, which at the same time makes the symbolic glow in its permanent relationship with the real, forming an imaginary. It is through the imaginary that relationships with the world and with meaning are woven. In a few minutes, we will talk with two visual producers that makes images linked to the task of childcare. It can be perceived that they escape the circular patriarchal oppression on the role of mother to show from an activist point of view how women negotiate and transform that assigned pattern. They show pictures committed to the object of their loved one, in a way, with a future, with a beginning as well. It is also a form of showing how topological the deep-rooted dichotomy between the public and the private is. From the stereotyped place of the woman who is invisible to who expresses through images her sensations and experience. The Spanish feminist writer Victoria Sao referred to the legend of the stork as a way of sexual repression to make the mother invisible and deny her human dimension. The productions presented here involve the decision to understand in an autonomous and singular way the desire to being a mother and enjoying it in opposition to socially forced motherhood. These images are also closely linked to experiences and celebrating both bodies, mother and child, and giving an account of the rituals of intimacy and desire to mother care consciously. Both projects are long-term explorations centered not only on the relationship between mother and child, they include family, community, and investigating society's expectations about motherhood. They are deeply interested in the way familiar relationships, particularly the role of mothers, looks and changes over time. Well, I will introduce them, and we will hear both and see both photographers now. Sarah Pabst is a photojournalist and visual storyteller based between Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Germany. Her work focuses on women, identity, human rights, and environmental issues. It has been exhibited both nationally and internationally. She's a member of the collective Ayun Photographers, a collective of women storytellers united by Latin America. She's also part of Women Photograph Network. She became this year a National Geographic Explorer. She has also an internship at the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting. Her work has received international recognition in competitions such as the Picture of the Year International, POI Latam, and Lens Culture Emerging Talent, and has published in several outlets, including the New York Times, Time, Bloomberg, and Financial Times. She has recently published a photo book called Morning Song, in which she speaks about motherhood, lockdown, between other subjects, and surely she will tell us more about it. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Alejandra. Also, thank you for your presentation. I've been taking notes. I will start to screen share. Sorry. Can you see the screen? Yes.
Yes.
So
not yes, now.
You can you see it on the
yes. Now, yes,
yeah.
Perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, my internet today is kind of spotty. I hope it'll work well. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. So I always say I have like two hearts in my chest. One is the photojournalistic heart. I'm not an intern at Pulitzer. I had a grant for a project on femicides. Today I want to talk about the other heart, the personal heart, with my personal work. So taking from your presentation, the public and the private, the personal experience and visual narration. So what happens when we turn the camera towards ourselves? So we are always used to photograph others, but in the moment when we photograph ourselves, things become quite different. So now you can see the next slide, right? Just to make sure that it's working correctly.
No, not yet. Yes, now.
Okay, so it's kind of slow. That's good to know. Then I will adapt the speed. So I started to work on personal projects already quite some years ago. This was my first work where I started to turn the camera towards me and my relationship, which was kind of troubled in that time with my partner and traffic. And so, sorry for the noise. So I started to do like a visual diary to kind of be able to hold on to something, because I felt the need like to record something, to have a memory of what was happening if everything was turning out badly. So as our relationship was troubled in the beginning, I used to take these pictures. And then my second work, now you should see on the slide a portrait of my dad.
Yes. Yes.
My second personal work was about my family, the Second World War, and memories. I found a box of photos my grandfather had taken during the Second World War, and started to investigate what could have happened if I'd been born many years, like in the same time as my grandmother, and how the scars of the Second World War are still visible in all the following generations, like trauma, pain, and of course grief. And while I was doing this project, something really devastating happened. My brother died suddenly. So this project also became, it suddenly got a different meaning, and still holds some of like the most precious photos for me of all my photographer's life. This is going to be a book next year, so you can take notes. And after that, I became a mother for the first time, and I was kind of absorbed by childcare, by trying to work at the same time. So I was focusing more on my photojournalistic work, and I was doing assignments, which I love to do, but I didn't have much time for personal work. Until in 2020, in March 2020, well, we all know what happened. The pandemic started in Argentina, and we were suddenly locked down. I just come back from Antarctica. I had been in the South Pole with Greenpeace and Financial Times magazine, and I kind of arrived, and 2 weeks later we were locked down in our apartments. So for the first time, besides all the struggle and all the pain and all the different moments, I kind of had time to really document what was around me. So I started to first of all photograph in a very photojournalistic way, like as if I was on assignment in my own home, just to fight against the paralysis of being locked down, of the struggle. Our daughter couldn't be outside on the streets anymore. Like the lockdown was really strict, and we were suffering from it a lot. So we used to go, for example, to the top of the building, and this is the small park in front of it, and photographed the really, really big need to be in nature. So I took notes when you said women are represented by nature, because well, it might be a stereotype, but I really see it in my work. Like I feel deeply connected to nature and the body, the woman, are really two big pillars in my work. So I grew up in rural Germany, and animals, forest, all this always had been like a super huge and important part of my life. So after a month in full quarantine, I noticed that I was pregnant, and a few days later, I noticed that I was going to lose this pregnancy. So it kind of struck me that even before knowing what was going to happen, like before having the evidence in my hand, like blood, basically, my body already knew that it was over. So I couldn't go to a doctor's appointment. Everything was closed. Like doctor's appointments were only for emergencies, and an early pregnancy loss is not an emergency. So it doesn't matter what it matters to you, like how devastating it feels. Like for in medicine ways, it's just nothing. So I didn't get an appointment. I was alone with my husband and my daughter with the pain and the loss. And then on the other hand, you think like, well, it's such an early loss, so maybe it's not a loss at all, and you shouldn't tell anyone. And that was the day where I thought, okay, I need to take a self-portrait of this moment. So I took my daughter and started to take photos with her. And I think that's the moment when this project Morning Song was born, and when I really noticed that I wanted to to work on motherhood and on the stigmas motherhood has, and on like these images we have of motherhood that society like paints for us that are always glorious, and you're like looking down on your child with loving eyes. And this photo was taken when she couldn't go to the playground, and she was not understanding why she couldn't be on the streets anymore, why she wasn't allowed to be outside. So she really literally didn't leave the house for a month. And I was comforting her, and at the same time I thought I need a picture of this moment, because it's like a one time in a history moment. So I always have a small camera at hand. And I started to take self-portraits with the other hand, and I felt like on one hand being a bad mother because I was photographing my child in her despair, but on the other hand I thought like I need this picture. So I think this is a bit the confusion we always have in our heads if we are photographing our own family, because you're part of the moment, but on the other hand you are also want to record the moment, so you're the photographer, which kind of makes you go outside of the moment, because you need a little bit of objectiveness. Like there's no objectiveness in my opinion in photography, but you still like have to think about light for example. So yeah, I took this picture, and then I started to photograph like with a closer eye everything that resembles fertility. I was reading about pregnancy losses, how it's depicted in images, and I found out that, for example, pregnant women in paintings were not represented in Renaissance times. Even if they were pregnant, they were just like painted without the belly. And I read that granates are a symbol of fertility, which, yeah, due to all the small semillas, no, I don't know the Spanish word. So yeah, I started to seeds, exactly, all the small seeds. Thank you. So I started to, on the one hand, capture moments that were fleeting and just that I encountered, and on the other hand, I started to produce photos, like to buy a grenade, wait for the exact light that I wanted. I noticed that always at the same time, our apartment had a really nice light, which was 10 minutes. So I used to prepare for these 10 minutes and do the portraits in that moment. And these are all things I wouldn't have noticed, I think, in our like rushy everyday life, but I noticed them because we were all the time inside, and you start like looking at your surroundings with another eye. I also overposed images with my body. I did a lot of self-portraits, examining how this felt to me, the need to be in nature. This is a beach produced over my body, for example. And when we could finally be outside again, I noticed that when people came back, really, because I always went to this lake to photograph it. As I had a press ID, I was allowed to be outside and photograph. And at this time, this project, together with our collective Ayun, got a National Geographic COVID emergency grant. So I finally had the job to do outside, which was great. So I always went to this lake to photograph it, because it for me resembled everything that I was missing. And nature had really like teamed in our absence. It was incredible how much life there was. And when suddenly people were allowed to be back 2 hours on the weekend, also the destruction was so visible. It was really a change in a week. And I also started to photograph that, the way we deal with nature, the fragility of our children, the way we like try to protect them. And there are sometimes things we can't protect them from. Birds who have the freedom to go wherever they want to. I photographed my husband and I, our relationship, also the way the pandemic somehow drew us closer together. And this is a picture of the day of the pregnancy loss that I posted on Instagram after thinking a bit. And I think it's, there's another picture who got the same attention, which I will show later. But I got so many messages from other women that they had lost a pregnancy, and many of them I knew, but they never talked about it. And I thought, like, how can we live in a society where we don't feel that we can talk about what's happening to us, which is apparently happening to so many women. And also so many men are kind of suffering from it, because if you have your hopes up, if you have illusion, and then there's a loss, then there should also be like the possibility to talk about it, because that's the way you heal. And but if it's a stigma and you're not allowed to talk about it, then this becomes like a wound that can never heal. And that also adds to this image that you are like you're the exception and the weird one, because everyone else is like happily pregnant or in a happy family. And yeah, my goal as a photographer is to deconstruct this narrative. Here's a portrait with my daughter. She's all the girls already carry the ovules they would have in their life when they are still in their mother's womb, which is kind of, you carry your grandchildren, which is kind of amazing, I think. I tried to photograph the virus. I will speed up a bit so we have more time. I've tried to photograph the virus and I didn't know how to picture it. So I started to photograph with filters on the flash to show like the kind of invisible thread around us. My daughter, and then this place where I went all the time, where I still go all the time. So all these magenta pictures show kind of, yeah, the thread that was all the time around us. And then I did a lot of also more stage portraits where like, yeah, I felt like the need to hide myself, yeah, all these like ongoing emotions. I also noticed that in paintings, women's mothers were always like depicted with one breast out. So I started to photograph, to reconstruct this narrative with everything that I felt I had lost, with all that you think can be in the future. Always the fragility of our children and the need to be connected with nature. And also these two, like their relationship was so beautiful to observe. Like I was, of course, like everyone else, we really suffered from lockdown, from pandemic and everything. But I always try like to wait to see the good thing and the bad stuff that happens. And really this, for me, this project was like a gift, because it changed so many things in my career. And I'm so grateful to have that I could record these moments. And this is the book that was published in July together. It came out together with my second son, more or less. There's a special edition and a normal edition. The special edition is almost sold out. The normal edition is quite sold out already as well. I included the testimonies of 5 other women who had lost a pregnancy. And they are seen on these small inlays, so people can decide if they want to read them or not. And yeah, I really, it's my first book, and I really love it. It holds so much meaning to me, and it's so nice to see it travel around the world. It's gone to Alaska, to Australia. Yeah, it's going to all those destinations I'd like to go. And just a small glimpse on what I'm working on now. So I started to also document I felt like I lost 2 more pregnancies, and then I fell pregnant again with my son, who was before the meeting. Some here saw him. So I photographed the pregnancy, but I also photographed what came after pregnancy, because there's another like narrative that is, in my opinion, totally or rose-colored or black-colored. Like it's either horrible or it's so beautiful. So I tried like to show these emotions you have that can change from one minute to the other. The empty belly, this glow and gloriousness and happiness you have, and all this like can change in between 2 seconds. I also like wrote down the story of the birth, because birth is also the same. Like I hated giving birth at a moment, and then I loved it, and then I hated it, and then so this is the other picture that got on the right side that got really loads of comments on Instagram, because I think many people felt identified with it, but it's a part of post-pregnancy that you never see or anyone tells you. Yeah, and always nature and animals, my daughter. And that's the last picture. Yeah, this moment, what you basically do after giving birth is just sitting around and feeding. So this is also good to know. And thank you so much for your attention, and looking forward to hear see Lilia's work.
Thank you, Sarah. It was wonderful to see your pictures and to hear all what you have said. Well, now, Lilia Pereira is photographer, teacher, and engraver. She began at 1998 with experimental studies of photography. Lilia also studied fine art. At 2008, she began to work as a photographer freelance and as art director in fashion, theater, and other live shows. At the year 2021, she has studied a diploma in documentary photography at the University of Buenos Aires. She currently works as a photography teacher at different workshops, both in person and online. She also teaches fine arts in the same institution where she has studied. At 2014, Laila has begun with her photo studio dedicated to portraying the family universe. Lilia, are you there? I like to see you. Okay. Well, as she's a little bit shy pronouncing English, I will read her statement while she shows her photographs. You have to imagine another voice. This series is part of my own family register that I've been carrying out for almost 9 years. At first, I was not very aware of the direction I would take or what topics I would deal with, and even less the reflections to which I would lead. For several years, I've been registering demonstrations at the street and made reports on social events. This dynamic progress gave me the tools for my project at home. The home was a strange place for my rhythm of life, which I had to learn to inhabit in order to become a mother. When I became a mother, I had to rethink my identity, record her parameters, ideas, take a stand, and decide what I will going to photograph. I decided to revalue my own story and to document the family history. When I realized the dimension of what photography represented in my life, I began to investigate the reason of my images and the reason of my devotion to record the daily family moments. I found in my file that I had only a single photo where my mother was seen pregnant of me. That's the photo she's showing. And that touched fibers in my being that rethought all my work. At first, I thought I was recording so as not to forget, to leave memory and legacy. Stay with this picture, please. Not having much of an archive of my childhood, I thought I was reversing the situation with my children. But time taught me that there was something more. A year after my second daughter was born, I made a self-portrait that marked the beginning of this path. I'm standing in front of the camera, holding her in my arms, wearing a death mask. We are seeing the picture right now, nursing her. In the background, it can be seen house. At the moment, 2016, I wrote, "Here I am, woman, mother, person, with my demons and ghosts, nursing the baby, being happy and at the same time missed, looking at my new body, accepting motherhood mine, the one I am building with my own family. Why the mask? It represents duality, the one that sometimes scares me, but at the same time, the day by day. I try to embrace. Here I am, and tomorrow I will be another. She also told that as I posted that image for the first time, I received many messages from colleagues telling me about the courage to show, on one hand, the chaos that it let glimpse, and on the other, that this image makes noise. What kind of motherhood I did want to describe with this image? I realized that I wanted to describe non-empathy. Empathy. From then on, I was able to start asking myself questions. Questions about fear or taboo that I've never dared to think. I could talk about the fears that my motherhood goes through, about the emptiness that being a mother sometimes generates on me, about the duality that I feel loving my children and at the same time wanting to flee to my old life. These images mitigate the madness of the motherhood. Duality, ambivalence, euphoria, despair, a destroyed body, an exhausted mind, guilt, love, intensity, fear. The fear of death, the fear of losing capacity, the fear of losing spaces, the fear of being excluded, the fear of losing one's identity. I was also able to find the sense of the masks in my photos. I understood that the system doesn't not allow us to show real motherhood. The system wants us happy and happy. It wants us racing inside the home and at the same time to be available to return quickly to work. I am relieved and comforted by the love we have for each other. I love my children with all my soul, but I think it is very important to talk about real motherhood, reflect and problematize in order to be able to run away from the mandate. I feel that talking about this, put it into words and into images, allow me to hear, to embrace, and to forgive. I feel like I'm opening the way for those to come. Photography allowed me to reconcile with myself and to show the rawness and crossed feelings that inhabit my motherhood, a sort of sublimation of transformation. When I started to think about my statement, I had to go much farther back in time. My story of fears and frustrations didn't begin in my motherhood. I understood that many of these fears were not mine and that perhaps I should not only mourn my new body, but also with my land, with my place of birth, from which I had to emigrate from a very young age and which left me with a great wound of uprooting. I was born in San Juan, an Argentine province that borders the Andes Mountains. San Juan is a seismic province. The greatest and most terrible earthquake of all was in 1944. My grandmother told us that she hid under a table with her little brother and the wall of the house came over them. They were saved but they never could forget the noise of tragedy. 33 years later, the second major earthquake occurred in 1977. My parents shudder at every memory of that summer. Therefore, they say that some memories are not diluted with the passage of generations, and traumatic experiences are engraved in all their descendants. 9 hours before giving birth, I felt a tremor in my vision. an ancestral moving of a magnitude that I never knew how to measure swept away my body. Duality, ambivalence, madness, death. Becoming a mother was overwhelming. It was like being absent from myself. It was so touching and beautiful that I still can't make it logical. I look at myself, I look at us, and I don't stop asking myself questions. As we see the pictures of Lilia, I can tell a conclusion of we have seen in both projects. In the images of Sarah and Lilia, we have just seen it is evident that the affections maintain a dimension associated with corporal experience, and that their enunciations are built around emotions that impact as an event on the receivers. It has always been possible to find a correspondence between photography and identity. A self-portrait is always a manifesto of an identity and shows the here and now of each one. In all cases, the concept of identity is nomadic. It is floating. Therefore, identity is understood as a permanent construction, not finished, and always subject to temporalities and contingencies. In both, we can find a performative gesture that brings into account the concept of the theorist François Soulage of ça a été joué. This has been staged because there is something theatrical in these images. In the photos of Lilia and Sarah, we found situated emitting gestures that invoke an intelligible and sensitive vibration in order to find new form or to establish connections between the existing ones. Thank you, Lila.
Gracias, Ale.
Well, we have questions from Beatriz. My question is to all the speakers. In an art world, this is still trying to let go from the European-centered vision on the world. How do you find the interaction of the non-Latin American public to your work? As from where we are now, what do you expect to change? Well, Sarah, Sarah Pabst, will you say something about?
Yes, I actually don't see such a big difference in the response, because I think, I think most of my how you say, viewers, many are female, and at least statistics say that they're more female than male, and I think that, yeah, that it's something that is like traversing countries. Like it's a topic that is more universal than centristic on something. I think that Latin American narrative has all the time more interest in the art world, because I think it has a really special own unique voice, which in my case it's a bit different, because I am usually, like, I am from Europe. I'm German, and I live in Buenos Aires since 9 years, and I'm married to an Argentine. I have Argentine children. So I think my narrative got really mixed with Latin American narrative, because yeah, what you live and what you feel also shapes your narrative. And I think there's so much, well, in our collective, my colleagues, I'm impressed by their creativity and their voice, and it's really going around the world. So I think that there's a huge need now for a change in what we see, because I think people are really tired of seeing all the time like a male dominated way of life. So I feel that in editors I talk to, I feel that in people responding to whatever posts or series or publications or exhibitions or books. So I think there's really a need for a change of perspective and for a different worldview, because otherwise it's, I mean, we are at that point where we are now because in the world, because of how we looked at it as well and what we did to it. So I think there's really a really huge need of change, and I think people are really open to it. So it's a good moment to bring your work out there, I think.
Yes,
that's my humble opinion.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that there is the photography as a device from visual language is a perfect way to show things. I don't see much difference, and I don't make a great difference between European or Latin American photography. The only thing I can say is that Latin American photographers dare to show more about their feelings, about their sufferings, about their emotions, such as female photographers do as well. There's another question I see from Danny Barrows. Do you think it's possible for a male photographer to describe through images the realm of violence against women? Yes, personally, I think so. Sarah, what do you think?
I also think so. I do think so as well, that there are like zillion topics people can work on, and that it's quite often that men work on violence against women. But I think, like, if you work on violence against women, that you should also like focus on the men who are doing the violence against women. Like we very often focus on the victims, but if you are a man, like you have a different approach to other men. So this is something, for example, that is really very few explored. Like, why do men exercise violence on women? Just because of their gender. So I think yes, but I think that it's really important also to change the narrative there, and like to go away from walking inside and taking a photo of a suffering woman and then just leave. So I'd be really interested to see like more work on masculinity, on like what does it mean to be a man? Why are men violent? Sorry, I don't want to generalize. Of course, not all men are violent, but I think it would be a really different approach, like to dig in why is there so much violence against women just because they're women? In Argentina, a woman a day dies because of someone, an ex-partner or partner or whoever kills her. Like in Germany, it's every third day. Like, it's not that in Europe it's not happening. So I'd be interested more, to be honest. I'd be interested more to see on why is a man doing violence on why are men violent against women? And but yeah, it's the same with documenting vulnerable communities, for example. I think it always really depends on your approach and on your that you really like make sure that that the people are photographed in the way they want to be photographed, and that they have a right to opinion and to say how, and that you're in dialogue with them. But of course, a woman can do every work a man can do, and a man can do every work a woman can do. But sometimes like there are stories that are not told and that are like maybe more interesting. That's my opinion.
I have two examples of men working on femicides or aggression of women. Yes, I have two examples. One is a Chilean from Chile, a photographer, and the other is a couple, Belén Grosso and Sebastián Pani. They made a very wonderful work about fire femicides. Femicides occurred by fire. We have men that works about this matter. Yes. There's another question. Continue shooting and recording of the family and life, which contains a lot of hidden information, household decoration, clothing, a series of family of personal items. Do you think it can also reflect the changes of the times to a certain extent, and some of the history of individual memory outside the history textbook? I think if we analyze photographs, and I analyze historical photographies all the time, we can find the time behind the photograph, the fashion, for example, and different things that we can find out from a picture. And it marks the time where the picture has been made.
Lilia, if you want to answer, I can translate for you. Lilia, si querés contestar, yo puedo traducir para vos.
Bueno, a ver, algo entendí.
Si todo el background que se ve en las fotos, la casa, la ropa, eso incide en mostrar una época.
Sí, claramente. Sí. Los colores de nuestros hogares, los objetos. Creo que todos tenemos como cajas de recuerdos de nuestros antepasados y eso claramente marca una época. Entonces, también la importancia del legado que nosotros les dejamos a nuestros hijos también es importante.
She's saying that clearly all the objects and colors and everything shows like the passing of time and also our ancestors, and that we definitely have like a duty or something we leave to our children and mark like the next time period.
Sadly, the perpetration is imposed on men. It is for us as individuals to break the cycle. Thank you for your answers. No, thank you, Danny.
So I've got a question to just add, because I think Sarah and Lilia, it was amazing to see your work. It's really fantastic work, and also Alejandra, to see the reference as well, like everyone else, just jotting down all of the names, and it's very good to kind of broaden out your frame of reference as well. So thank you for that. I was really struck by both projects, and well, Sarah, you talked about the pandemic and you know the kind of shift in your working practice, and also the kind of focus on yourself. With Lilia, it wasn't so clear if it was about the pandemic or if her practice had changed because of it. And I just wanted to ask, is there a parallel there with your practice? Maybe someone could translate my question. Thank you.
Lilia, sí, como en mi trabajo que se ve que como que cambió con la pandemia, y hay como un antes y después de la pandemia, y Y Sarah se estaba preguntando si en tu trabajo también en la pandemia hubo un cambio de narrativa o si era como más...
Hubo un cambio no tan grande, porque yo ya venía haciendo un registro del entorno. Este trabajo está dividido en septenios. Este es el primer septenio, y el primer septenio de los niños tiene que ver con la relación con sus padres y con el hogar. Así.
Traduzco eso y si no mi memoria me falla por la falta de español.
Septenio no es tan fácil.
Es los 7 años, ¿no?
Sí, sí.
She's saying that there was a change, but not so marked in her work, because she was already documenting her family for quite some time, and that she's focusing on the first 7 years of her children. Like, she's dividing the project in 7 years, because the first 7 years resembles the relationship children have with their parents, and the imprint parents have on their children in these first 7 years.
Lo que sí pudimos hacer es aparecer más los 4 juntos, porque bueno, pasamos 1 año y medio encerrados, así que eso hizo que nos uniéramos más y que pudiéramos aparecer juntos en las imágenes.
What definitely changed was that they were suddenly representing the 4 of them, because they were for 1.5 years all together. So there was suddenly the possibility to be all 4 on the pictures, which before hadn't been the case.
Okay. I have only one question left for both, and is, do you use, and how comfortable do you feel using photographic drifts as video, or combining fixed images with another artistic languages? Sarah, please.
Well, I combine a lot of different photography. Like, I use quite a different variety of cameras. I like from plate format to digital and phone and everything. I don't use so much other languages. I am a trained painter, so I started in the pandemic, or shortly before the pandemic, I started to paint again, to draw basically. And I did like some small games or whatever to use a bit of stitching or embroidery, or to paint on the photos, but I feel that it's like the really beginning of something that is not explored yet in my work. Like, it's not something I'm focusing on right now, but I know that there's like the possibility to like, the vision in my head is to go a bit back to fine arts. I don't know, I have this exhibition in my head with also with music. My husband is a musician, so to broaden up the spectrum. I do use a lot of slow motion videos I take with the phone. I really love that.
Okay.
But it's it's more like fun, not so much. I like to play around with media.
I made this question to Lilia previously, and she asked me, as an image creator, I have a lot of resources available when it comes to work. Within visual arts, they opened up a huge spectrum of possibilities for me. I love exploring other languages and combining them with the image. I'm an engraver, so manual work is indispensable to me, and mixed media is my favorite. I also love music and sounds of nature. The resources available help my expression. Anything that helps me to say is welcome.
Well, thank you, everyone, and a special thanks for all the work on translation, and thank you, Lilia, for agreeing to present in this very English language centric format, which is unfortunately not what we'd be ideally doing in the Global Photographies Network, but that's our limitation. It's language, and so it's even more of a privilege to be able to hear about your work and share what you've been doing. So thank you all. And yeah, what fantastic presentations. We've had a message saying how excellent it was from somebody who's had to leave a bit early, and we're very grateful to now know about your work in more detail and be able to follow you and what you do. So thank you all for the presentations today. And we'll, if people are following us on the Instagram account, we'll be announcing our next talk, which will be in about a month's time. I'm not sure if Rashi knows when that is, but we can keep it open and mysterious for now, if not.
It will be mid-December, I think the 13th or the 15th.
Yes, and per speaker to be announced, is that right?
Ooh, I'd have to double check.
I'm totally putting you on the spot. So people watch our Instagram account, the Global Photographies Network Instagram account, and also your networks for the information on that. Our guests, we're going to meet in the green room now, and Rashi sent you an email with the invite for that. And thank you again, everyone who's come here to listen and support us and being involved. I think lots of thanks coming from lots of different continents in the Q&A box. So thank you those people who've been letting us know they've enjoyed the talk. Okay, thank you. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.